quick tips for the forehand. The number one mistake that is made by tennis players when they're playing in this baseline area here is they hit the ball in the net. If you remember this tip, you'll never hit another ball in the net as long as you live. You've probably heard the phrase, you know, swing low to high. And that's true. You really do need to swing low to high from the baseline area. That ensures net clearance, because gravity is such a strong force. You really have to get some lift on your shot. And when the ball leaves the baseline, the ball is ascending. It's going up. Never think of the ball coming off the string straight off. It's going up. Now, but let's be a little more specific. How low do we have to get the racket? Sure, we have to swing low to high, but how low do we have to get the racket? The answer is approximately a foot, 12 inches below the contact point. Okay, so if I have a waist-high ball, okay, I've got to come down 12 inches below that point. So right now my racket is 12 inches below that ball there, and I'm swinging up, and that gives me net clearance. Now, if the ball is up here at shoulder height, I'm just flexing my knees. My racket right now is a good foot below the ball, so I'm swinging up from there. So that's tip number one. Get the racket at least 1 foot or 12 inches below the contact point. So you're going to have all kinds of different contact points, but wherever that point is, let's say it's there, I've got to come a foot below that when the racket is back here in this position. So I'm always swinging up. That gives you the lift, safe net clearance. Now, tip number two, many times when players start to swing low to high, they start to send the ball long beyond the baseline. That leads me to tip number two, which is palm down or racket face closed. If you notice, my racket face here is closed at the low point of the backswing. That means it's tilted down slightly. Now, once the racket is tilted down, as I swing up, it'll naturally become vertical. Okay? So if you see my racket here is down, now I'm not going to make any adjustments with my wrist, just swinging from the shoulder, and that's going to give me vertical at contact. So if you're hitting long, remember, start out with the racket maybe in a closed position like this, bring it back closed, and make sure at the low point of the backswing the racket's closed, and from there you're swinging up, and that prevents the ball from going long. Okay, tip number three, don't think roll over for your topspin. Remember, you want to hit the equator of the ball, that imaginary line around the center of the ball. So that's where you want to make contact. You don't want to make contact above the equator, you're just going to drive it in the net. And if you make contact under the equator, it's going to go long. So you want to hit the equator of the ball, moving from low to high. Now, when you make contact, the ball's gone. Keep the racket vertical for at least a half a foot to a foot, and then at that point you can let your wrist and your forearm relax as you finish. But don't be thinking roll the forearm and wrist in the contact area. The contact area is an area of a foot to a foot and a half where you want to keep the racket vertical as it goes through. And Federer's the master at that. You'll see, they'll take a picture of him. Okay, here's the ball. He hits it, it's gone. And on his finish, you'll see him still vertical up to this point. Once he gets here, then he rolls the wrist and relaxes and comes across. But you don't want to do that in the contact area. Keep the wrist in that fixed position until the ball is gone, then let it relax. Okay, remember, when you're out practicing Focus on 1 or 2 points maximum. Right now I'm just focusing on getting the racket a foot below the ball before I swing forward. So that rear leg is going to drop down more. The hitting shoulder is a little bit lower here, so I'm getting that good low to high. You need that, remember, for net clearance from the baseline area. All right, here we go. Okay, at this point, the hitting shoulder, the rear leg, and the racket are starting to drop down to get that good foot below the contact. Okay, here it's clear to see that the rear leg, the hitting shoulder, and the racket have dropped down. The racket's now a good foot below the contact point. Okay, contact is out in front. The racket is vertical. Now I'm going to keep this vertical through that contact area, that foot to a foot and a half. Okay, notice here, the ball is gone. The racket is still vertical. Now at this point, I can roll the wrist. It doesn't matter. The ball is gone. Okay, here's another shot that shows the racket vertical at contact. Now on the finish here, you'll see that I roll the wrist, but it's after the ball is gone. Okay, it's clear to see here the racket face is closed. The rear leg has dropped down. The racket right now is a good foot below the contact point. Now, many players, when they first start to implement the closed face racket, start to hit in the net. The reason for that is because they're not getting low the way I am in this sequence right here. My rear leg is down, the racket is down. If you don't swing low to high with a closed face, it's going in the net. You've got to swing low to high. Make sure to sign up for my free online tennis camp for more tips like these. All the best and happy hitting. Take care.